Thank you so much, Christina and Samantha, and for that, and indeed to all of the class today. I was at the class this afternoon for a light grilling, and it was. I don't know if I'm supposed to enjoy those things, but I enjoyed it. I had fun. So I'm taking all my books out of the bag, because all that time when I should have been deciding what to read, I was trying to decide what to wear. So I just, so I thought I'll just stick it all in a bag, and then when I get there, it'll become clear, or ad lib until it becomes clear. It's becoming clearer now as I look around at you. Certain things. I couldn't believe it when the lights went out. I was thinking anybody who's in my class will blame me, because I have singularly failed to work the DVD player in any of the classrooms that I've been in. We even moved across one class. We moved from Gary across to Vesey, thinking I thought I'd broken the whole of Gary. So we decamped to Vesey, and then I broke it. And but an IT person did come in to fix Vesey after I like to think we broke it, and he broke it further. So and I actually said to him, I said I would like a written statement to say that you did it, and he said of course. So anyway, and Craig's story of our meeting and our getting lost repeatedly on the way from JFK is verbatim. That's exactly how it was. And my delight at finding myself lost in Queens knew no bounds, because, as Craig also said, Queens is where the Shangri-Las come from, than which there is no greater group in all of music history. Yeah, I just thought I'd say that. I went to see the New York Dolls play in Belfast about 10, 15 years ago, and they said, we're going to do an old Shangri-Las song now, because we're the fucking New York Dolls. And I thought, that's about as good an introduction as you'll ever need or get. So I'm going to read a few bits from a few things. Is that okay? Good. Okay, I'm going to start by reading, after those three lovely introductions, and there's not much more I should say about myself, but occasionally it is the case that you turn up to do a reading, and just about as you're about to step up to start, somebody turns to you and says, are you okay introducing yourself? Which is a very hard thing to do. But anyway, a number of years ago, I wrote a piece for a publication called Identity Papers, which was being published by the British Council in Brussels. And they asked a number of writers, north and south, if they would like to contribute something on the subject of identity and Ireland. And every Irish writer I knew who got asked to do this, we all phoned each other and laughed ourselves silly that we were being paid to talk about identity. It was the equivalent, we thought, of somebody turning up at the door with a whole lot of money and saying, have you any old rope you'd like for this? Anyway, so this is the piece I wrote was called I Am One of the People, and it's I'm going to move this slightly. Let's rearrange the furniture. What's that? Oh, watch the wires. Dear. I read a lot with poets. It's great being a poet, because the introductions go on forever, and then 7 lines later they look up and bow. And that's in my next life, I know what I'm going to be. So this is a piece called I Am One of the People, and it is just a reflection on the complexity of identity. And I apologize that there are a lot of numbers in it, very large numbers, but stick with it, they get smaller. I am one of the people. I am one of the 320 million people living in the states of Europe joined pre-Nice Treaty in economic and political union. I'm one of the 60 million people living on the islands immediately west of the European peninsula, one of the 6 million people on the smaller of these islands, of the 1.5 million who inhabit the 6 northeasternmost counties of the historic 9-county province of Ulster that make up the administrative region of the United Kingdom known as Northern Ireland. I am one of the countless thousands of people who left here in the 1970s and 1980s, hoping to make a life across the water free from crap about Protestant and Catholic, orange and green, about what? Shit. Okay, I think I might have broken that as well. Thank God. I am one of the countless thousands of people who left here in the 1970s and 1980s, hoping to make a life across the water. That was what it was. It was the water. That was the crossing of the water, dramatized. Free from crap about Protestant, Catholic, orange and green, about what school you went to and what street you lived in. One of the very many who found that the first thing they had to do upon arrival at the other side was explain themselves to police officers in terms of what street they lived in, what school they went to. I am one of the people who returned eventually, who knows why. I am one of the people, numbers strictly anecdotal, who use across the water, not the mainland, when referring to the larger of these islands, and these islands to avoid the potentially offensive British Isles. I am one of the people who will likewise avoid saying Ulster or the province on the one hand, and the north, the 6 counties, or failed political entity on the other. I am one of the people with a British passport who could equally carry an Irish one and have considered it often, if only in hopes of better treatment in the event of a hijacking somewhere in the Middle East. One of the people who feel perfectly at home in England but will cheer on almost any country in the world playing England at football. I am one of the smaller group of people who will not mind England victories if Manchester United players score the winning goal, and am, incidentally, one of the people who could name more players from Bayern, Barcelona, possibly even Bruges, than from the Belfast teams competing in the abysmal Irish League. I am one of the 300 people who turned up in pairs on Saturday the 12th of May 2001 to the failed attempt at the world record for couples kissing simultaneously in Belfast's Odyssey Arena. We were 600 couples short. A mile from where, late on the night of Friday the 11th of May, 3 Australian tourists were beaten so badly, one of them required plastic surgery to his ear. Orange bastards, their attackers called them. What did they think those were? Protestant accents? I am one of the people who voted for the Good Friday Agreement, aimed at bringing peace and stability to Northern Ireland, and one of the ones who worry that the agreement has made this a more divided place than ever to live in. I am one of the 2 people who will get out of bed to feed Marvin and Daisy Blur the cats in the morning. Correction, I am the only person. That piece is somewhat out of date. Marvin and Daisy Blur the cats are sadly no longer with us, but Pancho and Pablo the cats are. And I have 2 children who will get out of bed to feed the cats in the morning, who are sitting just over there. So thank you. So that world record for couples kissing, as I say, we were 600 couples short. Ali, my wife who's here, that was our anniversary. So yeah, what will we do for our anniversary? Shall we go to a world record attempt for couples kissing? Yes, so we did that. And they decided that instead of having the attempt for the most couples, they would just have the longest kiss. So we entered, and we thought we were doing pretty well. And it was a bit like, have you ever seen They Shoot Horses, Don't They? You know, those dancing, depression, people were just falling, just dropping. And eventually we dropped as well. And 2 15-year-olds won it. And managed, I believe, to eat their lunch while still kissing. It's kind of like this extraordinary. There was a bus, isn't this true? They sent a bus around Belfast to try and find 600 couples who would come to the Odyssey Arena to kiss, and it came back filled entirely with teenage boys. They just wanted to do their bit to help. I admired them. Right. So I thought I would read a little bit from Gull, this novel, which just came out the night before I arrived. It came out on 6th of January, which you all know is Epiphany. And it was conveniently the night before I left to come to Villanova. But it was also the birth date of John DeLorean. He was born on 6th of January in 1925. And I think that's sort of, all through his life, he was somewhat impulsive in some of the things he did. I think he believed in revelation. And so I was very pleased to be able to launch the book then. So the book, as Christina and Samantha said, has three main points of view, but two really. A man called Randall, who works for DeLorean, and a woman called Liz, who worked in the factory in Belfast. So if you don't know this, that DeLorean car, that one, yeah, from Back to the Future, that car, they were built in Belfast. So a lot of years ago, people didn't know that the Titanic was built in Belfast. Anyway, the DeLorean car was built in Belfast, and it was a great factory in that there were 2,000 people who had never had jobs in manufacturing worked there for 1 year. And they built 9,000 cars, and then he went broke. So that's what the story is about. But women were employed on equal terms and equal pay as men, something that actually to this day is still not standard, which is a disgrace. At that time, it was practically unheard of in manufacturing in the United Kingdom or Ireland. So anyway, so this is just a short passage about the Belfast character Liz and the first time she sees the DeLorean motor car. I had this notion that all the people in the novel who get DeLorean, it's the doors, that when the doors go like that, their faces go like that as well. They just get it. So this is just a little passage. Liz has not worked since she married. She's got 2 teenage children, 2 teenage boys. And they're never named throughout. They just bicker the whole time. She can hardly tell them apart. They just argue. And she hasn't worked since she got married and had a family. And she's heard that the DeLorean is looking at bringing his factory to the south of Ireland, to Limerick, but she doesn't know that it's coming to Belfast. And just very quickly, there's a mention of a politician called Roy Mason, who was the Labour Party Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. He had responsibility for Northern Ireland, and he enticed DeLorean to Belfast with millions and millions of pounds worth of government subsidies. So I'll just read this short passage. Except I lost it while fiddling around there. So I'm now going to sing you my favourite Shangri-La song. Which is? Train to Kansas City. There you go. Liz had the 4 nearly matching plates lined up on the kitchen countertop, ready to serve dinner when the news came on the TV. She stretched out her right foot and with the toe of her slipper pulled the door open another 6 inches so that she could see the screen in the corner of the living room. As ever, it took her eyes a moment or two to adjust. The contrast was gone or stuck, she wasn't sure which, and there was something wrong too with the vertical hold. Every couple of minutes, a swelling would appear right down at the bottom of the picture, like a tear forming on an eyelid. Only instead of brimming over, it would begin slowly to move up the screen, pulling everything it passed through an inch to the right, turning landscapes into abstracts, people into question marks, twisting their words besides, for there was an oral counterpart to this visual distortion. And the worst about it was that while it was only every couple of minutes, they could not justify the cost of leaving the set in to be repaired again. £15 it had cost them the last time, the pin-cushion correction circuit apparently. £15 and their marriage almost. Robert had been nearly as inconsolable as the boys without it. She wrapped a tea towel around the handle of the potato pot and lifted it over from the stove. 4 pieces for Robert, 3 each for the boys, 2 for her. Roy Mason was on, standing in a field by the looks of it. She couldn't hear a word he was saying. The boys, out of sight at either end of the settee, most likely were arguing. She never, she did so. She never, she did, she never did. Give over, the pair of you, Robert shouted, closer to hand. The armchair, always the armchair, to the left of the door frame. I'm trying to listen to this. Have you your hands washed? Liz called to all three, a second before Roy Mason's voice finally rose above her son's bickering, if rose was a word you could ever use of something so flat and nasally. This is a great day for British industry, a great day for the people of Northern Ireland, and most of all, a great day for the city of Belfast. Liz took the pork chop pan from under the grill where it had been keeping warm, and when she turned back, there was the man from the newspaper that time, the car maker, not in Limerick now, but in Belfast, standing before the microphone that Roy Mason had just stepped away from. It had to be raised a good foot before he could speak. Thank you, Secretary of State. He sounded a bit like Gary Cooper. You thought that, didn't you, from the way I said that? You thought that sounds just like Gary Cooper. I can't tell you how good it feels to be somewhere people understand you at last, what it is that you're trying to achieve. Not Gary Cooper, George Peppard. I'm delighted to be able to announce that following my meetings with Mr. Mason and his team over the past few days, the agreements have all been signed. You know, they told us back home we couldn't do this, go right back to the blank page and build a brand new type of car and a brand new type of factory. They told us there were good reasons. No one had successfully launched a company since Chrysler in 1923. They're probably still telling us that, but we can do it, and we will do it on this very spot, from cow pasture to car production in 18 months. Liz looked down. She had put all the chops on the one plate. She used her fingertips to redistribute them. Hot, hot, hot. The boys came in, pushing and shoving like some strange two-headed beast trying to tear itself apart. Not chops, said one of them. Sure, you love chops, said the other. No, I don't. You do. I don't. You do. Robert appeared in the doorway, looking behind him still at the TV. Back in the evening news studio, the industrial correspondent was throwing out figures. 300 jobs in the initial building phase, 1,200 jobs when production began, rising eventually to 2,000 in one of the most economically depressed parts of Belfast, a city whose only notable contribution to the auto industry was the invention of the pneumatic tyre 100 years ago. Robert shook his head. If somebody was giving me 30 grand for every job, I think I could see my way to rustling up 2,000 of them as well, he said, and went and sat down at the table. Liz strained the peas between the angled lid and the side of the pot and spooned them onto plates. And this, the industrial correspondent said, is the car that is creating all the excitement, described by its creator, John DeLorean, as the most ethical mass production motor car and the first car of the 21st century. Liz tilted her head, trying to make sense of the image on the screen. Something odd was happening to the sides of the car. For a moment she thought it must be a trick of the vertical hold, but no, those were the doors opening, rising up and up and up. She set down the slotted spoon she had been using for the peas and covered her mouth with her hand. Honest to God, it was the only thing she could think to do to keep herself from laughing out loud. I'm going to read one short final piece. Is that okay? Have we got time to do it? Okay. I'll read one final piece. I mentioned the Titanic and the ship. You know, we built the ship. That one. But a long time ago, nobody knew that. Not so long ago, nobody knew we'd done that. And now you can't go anywhere in Belfast for reminders that we built the ship. And in 2012, the centenary of it's going down. I was asked to do something because everybody in Belfast who used to write about identity for Belgian publications was now writing about the Titanic for public events. And I got asked to write something for a requiem that was in the St Anne's Cathedral in Belfast by a composer called Philip Hammond, very fine composer. And I was delighted to be asked to do it but I was absolutely stuck because so much has been written about the Titanic, I couldn't even think where to begin. And in the end, after about a year, because he'd given me plenty of warning, I was driving into Belfast and I saw a sign, Belfast 2.5 miles, and I remembered hearing that 13,000 feet, which is how far down the Titanic is 2.5 miles. And I started to think as I drove, imagine that ship falling past all those houses, past that supermarket, past that factory, past those houses, that junction, past the railway bridge, past Central Station, past St. George's Market, down May Street. It's still falling. Everything in that ship is falling, 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 falling. And that was it. That was started. So he had asked me to write 5 short pieces. I'm not going to read them all, but 5 pieces. One from the point of view of an American passenger dying. He was very specific. One from the point of view of the British crew, the radio operators. One about Belfast. One about the music. So I wrote one about the band, and then just one to sum up. So I'm just going to read a couple of those, if that's okay, just to finish up what's upside down. So these are meditations on the lost souls of the Titanic. And I imagine the American walking from his home to school when he was a kid, and it was exactly 2.5 miles. And now he's fallen. He's one of the first-class passengers. I'll say these things before I start, and then I'll just read them straight through. The last sign, you maybe know this because you maybe seen the movie. I didn't know any of this, and I did see the movie. The last call sign ever put out by the Titanic was CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, DE, MGY, MGY. CQD was the precursor of SOS. That night they used SOS for the first time, and they used it with CQD. DE just means from, and MGY is the call sign of the Titanic. And that's it. Right, I'll just read a couple of these. So this is how the end begins. That first plunge, as stunningly cold as a face in the basin on a winter's morning, whisking breath away, opening a door on the boy who stepped out winter, summer, spring, fall, under the vastness of a Midwest sky, along the road to school, and all that school would lead him to, summa cum laude on summa cum laude, commodities, country club, every step then an adventure, every foot fallen now, a recapitulation of futures past. I can see it with my eyes shut, the wind making waves in the wheat, the farms, small craft flung far and wide, because space, like time, we had in spades. 2.5 miles, 13,000 feet, from porch to porch, from surface to seabed, from the beginning to the end of the end. That's the first one. That's the second one. CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, DE, MGY, MGY. 2 of us, always 2 of us. CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, DE, MGY, MGY, in tandem or rotation. CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, DE, MGY, MGY, the windowless Marconi room. CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, DE, MGY, MGY, tap, 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 tap. CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, DE, MGY, MGY, latitude 41.46 north, longitude 50.14 west. CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, DE, MGY, MGY, seek assistance, immediate assistance. CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, DE, MGY, MGY, repeat, repeat, assistance. CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, DE, MGY, MGY, 2 of us, always 2 of us. CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, DE, MGY, MGY, the water-filled Marconi room. CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, DE, MGY, MGY, in the sea, clinging 2 of us. CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, DE, MGY, MGY, and then CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, DE, MGY, MGY, just me. And I'll just read the last one, that'll do. So listen, thank you very much indeed for coming along this evening. And so this is the last bit. Because of what we hit, we missed the trenches, the crash, the hungry 30s, the blitz, the camps, the bomb. We missed Chaplin, Keaton, Birth of a Nation. We missed Jolson, Garland, Gone with the Wind. We missed TV. We missed Dixieland and swing, bebop, hard bop. We missed Elvis, Little Richard, a wop bop, a loo bop, pompadours and mop tops, and wondering what the world was coming to. We missed birthdays, wedding days, anniversaries, christenings and communions. We missed the other fates we might have met, the deaths we might have died, the influenzas, the cancers, the embolisms, the cirrhoses, the suicides, the simply slipping into sleep. We passed instead into myth, launched a library full of books, enough film to cross the Atlantic 3 times over, more conspiracy theories than Kennedy, 97 million web pages, a tourist industry, a requiem or two. We will live longer than every one of you. Thank you. I think it's a couple of minutes. Oh, I'm just mopping it up and kind of sucking my fingertips. That's fine. Sure. Seems okay. I'm not leaving here until you ask me a question. Good sir, in the front. How are you?
You mentioned to us in class a few times about your experience of music, being in the band when you were young and whatnot, and obviously Good Vibrations is all about music. So I'd like to ask you, since you also brought up one of your pieces about the Titanic, dealing with the band and the Titanic, what to you makes music, in terms of artistic expression, unique as a form of art, and what is the power of music to you? I would just like to hear your
Well, I mean, my good friend John Immervar is here, and he and I might have a different idea about what constitutes movie. John is possibly the only person I know who, if I said what was the band that that Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend were in, he would say who, and he wouldn't know he was giving you the answer. Absolutely no interest in that at all. So the fact that there are many kinds of music, and some of what I respond to, and what Good Vibrations is about. There is a line in Good Vibrations in the movie about the revolutionary power of the 7-inch single. I am a fervent believer in, my children again will attest to this, to the power of pop music, rock and roll. I absolutely love it. I love the fact that it is a form that is generally best done by people without very much musical skill. It's true. It's true, because that's why it keeps regenerating itself, because with a very rudimentary knowledge of music, and with just the absolute being in the world at that age, you make all those great songs from the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. There are all these great moments. This protest against getting old is what I think rock and roll is. So anyway, so I love that. I love the fact that it encapsulates so much about our lives, that we can place ourselves to do with, simply by listening to something. So I love that power. I think it's beautifully eloquent, and the Shangri-Las, I can't tell you enough. But things like that, so there's a yearning in it that I absolutely love. More recently, I mean, I do listen to lots of other kinds of music. More recently, I've written an opera for the first time, a libretto. I wrote a libretto earlier this year. In fact, I wrote two quite close together. The first was an adaptation of John Fowles' The Collector, and I only did it because I was working from John Fowles' text, and I thought I couldn't really go wrong if I used his words. And then I wrote another one about Belfast, a 50-minute opera about Belfast with a composer called Neil Martin. And I worked very hard on the libretto, and I was quite pleased with the libretto. The moment Neil started to set that and I heard the music, I cried, because it's a musical form. It's extraordinary just to hear So I think that's simply the answer to the question, what it is about music. It's music. It moves in a way that, I know if I listen to opera, I get about a third of what's being sung, even when it's in English. But I still am moved by it, by the scope of it, the capacity of it is enormous. So I think it's as simple as that. And we find that in poetry. There are rhythms and cadences. We talk about musicality in poetry as well as prose as well as poetry. So I think it's that you feel it. So as I said to the class this afternoon, if anybody else has a short question that they would like a 2-hour answer to, please ask it now.
What's the Belfast opera? What time period?
It's from 1615 to the present day, in 50 minutes. Yeah. So it's a celebration of 400 years of Belfast. So somebody walks in and says they say that they want to go back to 1613, and one of the cast says, "Please let it mean just before 4:15." And then he starts to sing, and they go, "Oh God, no, he does mean back to the Elizabethan times." So it's yes. So it's quite a tall order, and we have a cast of we have a chorus of 120. We have an orchestra of 30. And because it's Belfast, you can't do anything in one place. Everybody has to be involved in it. So we have the chorus drawn from east, north, south, and west. So and we don't offend anybody gratuitously. Anybody any other things that they? No. Oh, just go ahead.
I'm just curious, because I know you've written a screenplay and now you've written a libretto. Is there a similarity of experience when you see your words transferred to another medium? Do you feel like you've lost something, or what is that experience when you see your words interpreted or translated?
I think in the main, I think they're greater. They feel it has been something has been brought to them. The film. That again, it's a visual medium. So you're writing words for a different medium. So the film is about visuals, and that has to work visually. The script is crucially important, but it gets less important as it goes along. Likewise with the libretto, or with the opera. At the very beginning, everything is about script. Everything. And then once the libretto has been handed over to the composer, I'm pretty much out of the picture, apart from the fact that the composer's a friend. But I just can't tell you. I'd written a very, very, very short aria. Neil and I went out one night, and we were determined not to stay out because I had to write an aria in the morning. He'd asked me for an extra little aria, and so we talked all evening about how we were going home early, and it got later and later and later. And I did go home, as Ali will tell you. If I'm not seen at midnight in my own house, the police are instantly called because I'm dead somewhere. I'm somewhere dead because I always, whatever I'm doing and however much I'm enjoying it, I go home at midnight. And so I did go home at midnight. I should have gone home at 11 or at least that. Neil stayed out much later. Anyway, in the morning, I wrote this very short, I wrote a 2-word aria. It was kind of as a joke. Well, I wrote 2 words and then I went for a shower and I thought I'll finish it when I come out of the shower. And then I thought, actually, you could play with that and just make that the aria. So I phoned him up and I told him my 2 words, and he said I could really work with those 2 words, and I went over to his house a few days later, and he played it, and it was as I had described it to him, the way as it was sung, the words would change meaning and color, and he had composed something, and the tears were just running down my face because it was so grand, the words were. If I say it was kind of clever what I'd done. It was accidental, but it was clever, and that's okay. You can be accidentally clever, but it was no more than that. The music makes it into something else. I can't tell you that. You have to come to Belfast next June. Next June, 16th. This June. God help. That's soon. Yeah, it's June. No, because it's not going to sound clever now. No, it's not. They were secret. We're not going to do that. No? Are you going to ask me a question, Miranda? Right. Okay, my daughters know. So for not very much money, they would tell you that.
A lot of money.
Yes, yes, for a lot of money. Well, listen, it's very warm in here, I know, and you've been enormously patient already. So I think that I should just go and sit over there and sign books. That's all right. And clean this up. Oh yes, do applause. Thank you. Yes.